Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. You are listening to Rabbit Hole Reflections with Lisa James. Before I introduce my two very wonderful guests to you today, I need to explain something really quickly. So I am actually driving. Trust me, I'm hands-free. I'm being very safe. I'm taking my fiancé to the airport. He is on his way to Florida to be with our nephew, who is 16 years old, who has recently been diagnosed with cancer and will be undergoing surgery to remove the mass. And then he will also have to undergo chemo because they discovered that the cancer has actually spread into a couple of his lymph nodes. So my show today, I know it's going to touch a lot of people, but I have two very special guests with me today, Kellie Fitzgerald and Jody Doty. They are both survivors of cancer, and they are now living a full, thriving life. And we're going to talk to them about their journeys through their rabbit hole of cancer, how they came through it, through the chaos, and how their life has forever changed and has actually gotten better and for them during this entire process. So please join me in welcoming Kellie and Jody. Good morning, ladies. Thank you so much for being here.
Morning, Lisa.
Kellie, are you
Kellie?
Okay. Well, we will start with you, Jody.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So hi.
Hi. Good morning. Thank you. I know you're driving on your way to whale watching, and that is an amazing experience. So thank you for joining me, even though you're on your way to such an amazing excursion. Can you give us a little bit of background with, your journey with cancer and?
Sure. I actually had two types of cancer. I had skin cancer, and I think it's because I grew up in Hawaii and the Midwest, and I burned a lot as a kid. And so I have had 14 surgeries on my face, mostly the left side. Back in those days, we didn't really. It was healthy. If you had a tan, it was considered healthy. You looked good, whatever. And it was even during those days. And I remember where we would lay out. I laid out on my friend Sally Brown's buffalo farm on her roof. She put baby oil on. I didn't because anyway, we burned, and so I got skin cancer. I think I started the first time I had an issue on my face was, I think, right after my second child was born. So I was in my 20s, early 20s, and I've had, multiple experiences with the skin cancer. And I was very lucky because it was basal cell, which is probably, if you're going to get the skin cancer, that's probably the best kind to get, if there is such thing as a best kind, because it's very easily treated. However, it also, for me, I had a third recurrence. You never know when it's going to come, And so I had a third recurrence of it where that was really pretty aggressive, and I wound up having to have my whole face. I lost my left eyebrow because the cancer was so big, the tumor. And so that was pretty difficult. I had a hard time because it's your face, for one, and that's, there's something psychological about that, dealing with cancer of the face, because, that's what you show the world. But where it is, I have my bangs covered. But, I was just really thankful, especially the third time, that they were able to just get it all. So that was my big focus, although, of course, you deal with the aesthetic aspects of it, or the beauty aspects of it, because we're so focused on that. And in a lot of ways, that because I'm a soul reader, a psychic, I look at the energy, not just the skin or whatever. That actually really helped me to redefine beauty, to redefine what is important, to look beyond the surface to, what makes you who you are, and it's not just your face or your body or what, even what you do. So that was the first cancer, and again, 14 surgeries later, and I'm so far, right, knock on wood, and I'm wearing my sunscreen big time when I'm out whale watching, My second one was breast cancer, and I just had the sense something was wrong, and went in for a mammogram. I was a little bit late with my mammogram, but not too bad. I was probably about 4 months later, and they discovered I had breast cancer. It was very early, and so I often tell people, get your mammogram, go in. And I did not have a lump. I also tell people that. I mean, I did not have anything visible, but I used my intuition, said something's amiss. And anyway, so I wound up having radiation, and I had internal radiation, which is called Savvy, where they actually put looks like a little umbrella that opens up, and then you have all these tubes hanging from you like Frankenstein there, where they plug in the radiation. It was quite an experience. But what I learned from that, and what I've also learned through my meditation and my spiritual sense, is that with breast cancer, it's really about letting yourself receive. I'm a huge healer, and I had overgiven. I also had been working in a job that was unbearable for the last 2 years of it. I just really hated it. So every day I'd go to work and I hate this. And I really think that anger, I really believe the anger helped to create or at least exacerbated my breast cancer. So I wound up having my treatment, which was very intensive, but I learned that it's all about letting other people help you. I mean, for me, it was even to the extent where it was hanging, where they had to plug me in. It was interesting because they had a little technician that came on because one of the seeds, one of the things didn't work, so they came in with their little pliers, and it was really quite an interesting experience. But I really did have to let people drive me. And, how I got through it, I was very grateful for the help, for the medical help, but I also reached out and did a lot of alternative healing. And the main thing with the cancer for me was day by day, take each day, because, of course, some days were really, really, really tough, and other days were not so much. So whatever you can do to cope. I had a really funky sense of humor. I did with the skin cancer. I took pictures of my face every day, and it's like, you should have seen the other guy, because I literally, the first day of that really nasty surgery, I looked like a poster child for domestic violence. I think I my face was swollen. I was beat up. I was like, you should have seen the other guy. But so humor really got me through it. But it was mostly day to day, take the day, let people help you. This is your opportunity to really pay attention to your body, and that's the problem. A lot of times we just don't. We just go, I'll just work through it. And definitely pay attention to your body. Get your mammogram. Don't be afraid. I always do a post to women about getting their mammogram, and I have lost a couple really dear friends because one was working for herself, and she didn't think she could afford to get a mammogram, and she wound up had a lump. She waited, and so she couldn't afford the mammogram, but then she had to pay for a mastectomy. She had to pay for a lot of other things at the point where by the time she got it checked, she was almost end stage with it. And so there really wasn't much that they could do. And she knew, and it just saddens me. So your health is paramount. That's the number one thing. Take care of your health, pay attention, get the help. There's always resources, and out there. The other one, let me see, what was it that happened with the other friend of mine? The other friend of mine had a lot of vanity issues. And she really had this belief that if she didn't have a breast, she wasn't a woman. That was her belief system. And so she waited and waited and did not want the mastectomy. And again, modern medicine is so amazing. There's so much they really can do. Even if you're, having to, towards the end, they can prolong, they can do stuff, early detection's key, but sometimes you just don't know. So there's different types of cancers. I know ovarian cancer is a really tough one, and, so it's just get checked, listen to your intuition. If you have a sense that there's something wrong, pay attention, because really no one knows your body more than you do, really. So intuitively, just check it out. But anyway, I know I'm being long-winded, but my learning was really to let myself receive, to take care of myself, to release the anger. I really had to look at my anger and go, why did I stay in this situation so long? And then forgive myself and move on from it, and just be grateful for every moment, every day. That is the thing with cancer, is it does give you that sense of what an amazing gift life is. And I carry that with me every single day, because I can go back to, when you get that diagnosis, it totally changes your life. It's like and I had to remind myself every day, I'm the same person I was yesterday. I'm just dealing with, this is not who I am. It's something I'm dealing with, something I'm working through.
Don't you think that made all the difference? No, really, Jody, don't you think that made all the difference, that you made that distinction between you were still the same person and you were not cancer? It was just something you were going through?
Absolutely. What was it they said? I was cancering. It was something I was going through, something I was working through. And I actually used a lot of visualization and I know they have CDs now or music. They have things with chemo that you can listen to. So it's really even proactive. So you can make that, here's my healing project, and that's what I did. This is my healing project that I'm working on that I've created to heal myself. And it made all the difference, because I did not identify myself as, even when I was done with it. And I had a hard time with pink. Pink is not my color. I do not like pink. So okay, these are people they're giving me all this pink stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But they were supportive, and that's what really, it's like they are caring. Let other people care for you. And this is the way, my brother could hardly talk to me. Everybody deals with it, the family, because it affects everyone, not just the person going through it. But you got to let people, let yourself receive it and really appreciate that. But, I agree, Kelly. It's not that I identified as this is who I am. I am a cancer. It's like, this is me. I'm still me. I'm the same me I was yesterday before I was told I had cancer. And I'm just going to deal with this moment, this day, the best I can, just like a lot of people do with a lot of, whatever you're going through. Everybody has something they're going through.
Right. What kind of alternative techniques did you use? You mentioned alternative therapies.
Yeah, I definitely did visualization, which I do anyway for myself. But I also had some Reiki that was very helpful for me, hands-on Reiki. And I had it when I got my diagnosis. I had it, and then I had it afterwards. And afterwards was because I felt I was still carrying a lot of energy from the hospital. I wanted to let go of, when I first went, I wanted to let go of fear, because immediately when you get that diagnosis, your body goes into fear. And so it was a help to have someone lay their hands and just, because Reiki is all about releasing, letting go of memory, releasing, healing, concentrated, divine, help. And so I got that, and after I was done, it was, the same kind of thing where it was releasing the hospital energy, filling in with my own energy. I also was very lucky to have an artist friend that drove me to and from my treatments, and she made this beautiful angel doll for me. Bless her heart, and it had a glob of something on the breast that represented my cancer. So it was all symbolic, and it had this beautiful netting around it. And so what I would do would be I would sit with my angel, that actually also represented me, And I would put this net around both of us, and I would ask for healing assistance, during my treatment and just to remind me of the beautiful gifts that my life is and to be very present with my life. And so that was very healing too. And then, but when I finished my treatment, I cut that glove off and, took away the net. And it just was, for me, it made it even more real for my body. It was just very symbolic. So I considered that part of my treatment. And just really it was amazing how many angels on earth, how many people would come and offer to help you and normally I was the type of person, I'd say, no, I got this, or I can do this, or I don't need any help, and no, that was the whole lesson. No, I can't, it takes a village, and I had a village. I think I had 10 people on my team working with me, technicians, physicists, physicians, oncologists, radiologists. I mean, it just was amazing, and they're such caring people. And just to let myself receive. It's like, this is a hard way to do it, but I'm supposed to learn from this.
Right. Everybody's cancer story is different, and while yours has many similarities with mine, there are some differences too, because I was at a point, I was 27, and I was pregnant, and I was having a horrible, horrible miscarriage. And literally my insides were being ripped, and they took me into emergency surgery and found a cancerous mass in around one ovary. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was not concerned with that mass. I was concerned with trying to carry this child, which, of course, ultimately didn't happen anyway. But at that point, the guy in my life, that baby's father, was so, I'm going to lose her, that we ended up breaking up. So while you had a whole team of people around you, I didn't have anybody. Mm-hmm. It was kind of, it was a situation where strangers were kinder to me. And I was so horrified at what I'd gone through. I didn't even say the word cancer for 8 years.
Wow.
People closest to me didn't know what I had gone through for 8 years.
Right.
And that was because people that had been closest to me, the people I thought I could really count on, abandoned me. Yeah. So I had a lot of that going on. But I had a really wonderful nurse who had a friend who was a Buddhist monk, and she had another friend that was an Ayurvedic physician. And they took me to literally it was a monastery, I think, and they worked with me after my surgery. And through that, I learned that, strangers aren't really strangers. They're just friends you haven't met. And I grew up in an area where you just didn't tell people your problems. That was just something you kept inside. And so that was a really eye-opening experience for me that, here were these strangers who were so welcoming and so comfortable. I was so comfortable with them. And they really got me through everything. I had, either fortunately or unfortunately, the miscarriage and the gelatinous mass that had surrounded the tumor meant when the surgery was done, I had nothing left. So I was very fortunate in that I didn't have to go through chemo. I didn't have to go through radiation because it was all at one time. And part of the things that I went through was prior to that, I had actually been a swimsuit model.
Oh, wow.
And here I had a giant, you could play tic-tac-toe on my stomach to this day because of the surgeries. And that was my challenge, was I was more than my body. that beauty is really only skin deep, you know, or it isn't only skin deep, it goes much deeper. And because of the way I had been raised, I was raised with a very superficial bunch of people who it was all about how you looked, and you never had any problems and you never told anyone. So I think, you know, every cancer story is very, very, very different, and there's a different lesson for everyone that goes through it. But I think the key is to not accept that cancer as part of your body.
Yes.
You know, that don't identify with that. You know, when someone when I went to the doctor for the follow-up after my surgery and they called me a cancer patient, I said, no, I'm not. My body had something that was foreign, and that was cancer.
Right.
I am not that.
Yes.
And I through the years with doing a lot of volunteer work with the American Cancer Society and other organizations, I have found that people, particularly women, who stand so strong with their conviction that they are not their disease, they fare much better. An interesting thing on men with cancer is they have a harder time getting in touch with those fears. They have a more difficult time expressing the emotions that they're going through. And I think sometimes it's more difficult for men to really come from that place of, this is just something I'm going through, this is not me. It's just an observation I do.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember when I went for the radiation, there were two waiting rooms, and there was a waiting room with the women and there was a waiting room with the men. And the men totally silent, sitting there, each in their, you know, and the women are all talking, well, yeah, I lost my hair here, but this is what I'm doing, and, you know, this is the women are all talking it out, and some are crying, and they're supporting each other, and the men were totally silent. You know, it was just totally different ways of dealing with it, and I know some of them are much more, they so identified much more with their physical body, maybe not more, but in a different way, that it was really almost like a betrayal for them of their body, and I think it is harder for men to talk about it.
I think that's one of the in Tucson anyway, the cancer hospital in Tucson and the one in Phoenix as well. What they do now is they have incorporated more physical kind of things for particularly boys, but I'm sure men use those too, where they have a ball. I saw when I have a friend whose 7-year-old grandson is going through brain cancer, and they have a ball that is red and black, and it has a face on it, and it's kind of wrinkly. It's a wrinkly ball, and that represents the cancer. And what they do is they have these kids squeeze that ball as hard as they can and throw it on the floor and step on it or throw it across the floor, whatever it is. And that's their way of getting in touch with, you're beating this. And I thought, what a fabulous idea, you know. So, but every story is different. You know, I went through a lot of holistic treatments, and you know, I was doing things like turmeric and ginger before anyone, you know, recently that's all you hear about is how they.
Oh, you know, now that you mention it, I did that as well. There was a kind of a cancer, I can't remember the name of it, but there was a woman in in Canada that created some kind of, and it probably did have turmeric and other things in it. I don't remember now, but I did that as well. And prayer, and put myself on all the prayer lists. I just really put myself out there and said, okay, I'm open for healing. I'm receptive.
And that was a huge thing too for me was prayer. You know, there were times where I would be on a Reiki treatment table, and actually that is the point in my life where I started studying Reiki and became a Reiki practitioner. Was a result of my first cancer experience. Because they would have me on a Reiki treatment table, and I would have 2 Reiki practitioners working on me at the same time. And there were times where I was convinced I was floating off of that table because of the energy. But it was about accepting that love, accepting that help, like you said before. That is so crucial. And men especially, boys, male people, really need to be encouraged to talk about how they feel, because that's really important to talk through it. You go through so much internally. From one moment to the next, I was angry, I was scared, I was,
every emotion.
I was happy. Yeah. It's almost like a grief cycle, because you're grieving that health. You're grieving that, wow, so many people take their health and their body for granted and don't take care of it. And here am I. And, you do that.
Right.
You do a why me, and then you do a no, I can beat this. And you're all over the map.
Yeah, and the other thing is, too, it's like, okay, there's these things that they say you should do to not get breast cancer. And I did all those things, so why did I get this,
Right.
Because I breastfed my kids, that they say it's all those things. And it's like, you know what? It doesn't matter why. It's the fact that I have it, and I just have to deal with it. This is my opportunity. I just looked at it as a huge healing project that God had presented, that I created for myself, and I just went with it. It's like, okay, this is all about me now.
Right. And that's a tough one for a lot of people too, isn't it? That it's about me now. It's about me healing. It's about me receiving. It's a really tough one. It was really tough for me.
Especially when you're so independent, you're doing it all yourself. Or if you're not one used to reaching out to other people. I was lucky that I just seemed to be, when I put that out there, I'm asking for help, it seemed like I was directed just to the right people at the right time. Yep. I had a nurse that was named Jody, ironically, who sat with me and held my hand during my biopsy. And that was such a gift. And she didn't even know me. But there's so many compassionate, it's like they, in the medical practitioners, they were fabulous. And if you wanted to just sit and cry, which often you do, you have to have a release. The other thing I did was get a grief massage, what I call a grief massage.
Yes.
Where I went in a room and it was dark, and she wrapped me in warm blankets and massaged me, and I just cried. And wow, that was some of the best, because you can't cry around your family sometimes.
Right. And, I would look around when I was in the hospital, and I would see women who had gone through so much more than I had. And I felt like I didn't have permission to be upset over what I had gone through, because here were these people who had gone through so much more. Right. And it wasn't until a nurse, one of the nurses, actually mentioned what I was feeling to one of the other women, and I will never forget it. She came up to me, and she had gone through multiple surgeries and chemo multiple times, and she came up to me and she says, oh, I know that you think you haven't gone through enough, but I can't imagine what it would be like to lose a child. And that broke me. That was just, that was it. But one of the doctors said something that my whole focus was losing that child. And the doctor told me that baby saved your life. Something about the pregnancy hormones created that shield around that tumor and didn't allow it to grow. Wow. So, that was I was very, very lucky. But I had wonderful, wonderful nurses. They were absolutely fabulous. And, what a selfless, loving person that it must take to become a nurse. I have friends who are nurses, and they are just some of the most wonderful people on the planet. They really are earth angels, every one of them.
They really are. I mean, I found I'm still friends with Jody, the Jody that was was with me during the whole process. I mean, really, especially the beginning with the biopsies, and even that's not a fun thing. But
no,
but I kept her as she's even encouraging now. And she actually ironically went through her own kind of a cancer bout. Was a different kind of cancer, and I felt like that I could help her in a small way. It wasn't like what she did for me really, but it's just people being there for you. And sometimes it's hard with family. Sometimes, I mean, like you say, my brother, had a really hard time just talking to me about it. So he just didn't talk, and I knew he cared, but again, and maybe being male, but that was just so you're not only dealing with your fear and your your life changes and all the emotions, but you're also dealing with those around you, dealing with you. And I often the artist friend of mine was phenomenal because she would laugh, she would joke, she knew when I was tired, and she just really put herself out there to, I have such humor and a sick humor really, but she was really helpful because she would kind of tune into what I needed, and she really was like family at that point. Like you said, they were kind of the ones that reached out.
So many people that I've met through the years have different cancer stories. There's always one turning point or there seems to be always one turning point where there's one day, one moment, 1 second sometimes where it occurs to you that it's all going to be fine. And you kind of get over the hill and you know that it's going to be all right and it's mostly behind you. Did you have that moment, and what was it?
I had a couple of those, but I know one of them that was a very scary thing for me during the Savvy treatment, because it basically is like having an umbrella that's shut put in you, and then they crank it to open up for the space, and they had trouble with that. And I had that day of we don't know what's going to happen. Either this is going to crank and it'll be perfect and we'll be able to do this, or it's going to fall apart, it's going to close down, and then we can't, and then we'll have to do. And I had that kind of radiation because of my skin issue. I they didn't want to have me burn even worse. But when they cranked it, and it opened up and it stayed, I was like, oh, that was when I went, okay, I just know this is going to be okay. And the other was just a prayerful time right towards the end, and I just felt, Angel, I just felt so much support, and I just totally, in some ways, just gave it over to God pretty much. I just felt like I just released, okay, I know there's a reason I'm here. I know there was a reason, and I was fortunate they found it early. But and that was my moment. I just smiled and it's like, oh, if I can deal with this, I can deal with anything. And I am. And it was about that moment.
Yeah, I had something very similar. Actually, it was the doctor who told me that, I know you're mourning this child, but that child saved your life. And when I went into the monastery, they were saying, and they told me, and that really opened me up spiritually more. I'd always been a really spiritual person, but that event really opened me up more, because I was told that little being's entire purpose was to save my life. And I realized if that were true, then there was a bigger purpose for me. And I needed to survive, and I needed to thrive, and I needed to move forward and do, what I was supposed to do. So, yeah, I think we all have those defining moments when you're, even if it's not a cancer situation, we all have those defining moments that we can look back on and say, wow, that was really profound. That was really amazing.
That changed my life. I know one of mine was my treatment was, I had to go through twice because they didn't get it all the first time. And that was probably one of my lowest moments, was finding out, oh, no, we didn't get it all. Because you think you're over the kind of the hump of the surgery, and no, we have to do another one. And it was right before Christmas. And my last cancer treatment was the day before Christmas Eve. And I remembered I bought myself an ornament, and it was an angel, and it said gratitude. And I had finished my treatment, and I was wiped out and tired, but I was so grateful for surviving the experience, for all the lessons I learned in the experience. And every Christmas when I put that ornament on my tree, it just reminds me of that moment of what a gift and how grateful I am to be here, just to be here every day.
Now, you had a couple of incidents of cancer, and I did as well. My the second bout was 12 years almost to the day that I went through my first one. And I had a kidney that was acting funny, and I knew it was acting funny. And by the time I had an HMO in California that literally tortured me for 2 years. So by the time I moved to Arizona, I was pretty critical. And I ended up in the emergency room. That seems to be how I deal with these things. I end up in the emergency room. And the doctor who walked in took one look at me and said, I know what that is. We've got to get this out now, and prepped me for emergency surgery. And I didn't know who this doctor was. I had been in the emergency room, and it turns out she was one of the top urologists in the country. And she happened to be in the emergency room. She wasn't even supposed to be there. She just was there. And I ended up with a 44-pound kidney.
Wow.
And the tumor was encased completely within the kidney. So I was lucky again, and I didn't have to have any further treatment. But when after the surgery, she was talking to me, and she said, this isn't your first cancer rodeo, is it? And I said, how can you tell? And she said, well, because I've been inside your body, and I can, so it was really, and once again, it was just, I was very, very lucky that, and she did suggest that I might want to do, several rounds of radiation just to be sure. And I declined it and went back to my Ayurvedic diet and my herbal stuff and Reiki. But, and I've been fine, ever since. And it's been well over another 12 years. So I feel pretty safe at this point. But, when it happens the second time, you get angry. You get, but I did everything that I was supposed to do.
Right. And I thought I was done. I thought that was it. And I made that.
Right. So, I know what you said earlier on in the show about anger and being frustrated and having all of that emotional turmoil and negativity in your life had an impact, and you think that that's kind of where your cancer came from. I know for a fact that is where my second one came from. I'd gone through a very, very dark time in my life, and I was very, very, very angry all the time. And I was, at that point in my life, I was very, very, they called me Mount St. Kelly's, because the slightest thing, I was so upset all the time and so angry all the time that I would blow up over the slightest thing. And where I might blow up today, I then let it go. That's my, okay, I'm done, and I let it go and everything's fine. But back then, I would replay it over and over and over and over, and it made me sick. I absolutely know that made me sick. So I think taking some responsibility is also key in beating cancer, or actually any other disease. A lot of times people don't want to think that they maybe made themselves sick. They don't want to think that they have some responsibility for their health. So they go into kind of victim mode, and this is happening to me, it's happening to me, and it's really,
right.
There's a lesson there. And if you can look for the lesson, even if you're not ready to accept responsibility that maybe you brought part of this on yourself, look for the lesson. You know, look for what you're supposed to learn. I think we lost Lisa somewhere back a while ago. Are you still with us?
I have been here the whole time.
Do you have the number?
I wanted
We've
to
sort of monopolized the show.
And say something. No, but I was like, if I jump in, it's going to ruin it.
Oh, we're
so
two.
No, I absolutely was. No, that was great.
There's one on the boat too.
There were times I wanted to jump in, and you know, with Jody had mentioned one of her friends had put it off for so long, just getting her basic mammogram, and that's something that this child had done. By the time they discovered that he had cancer, it was already a huge mass, like your kidney. It was like the size of a baseball. They said, the size of a baseball or softball. It's huge. And it's in a spot that would be very uncomfortable for anyone. And he waited a very long time before he brought this to anyone's attention. The reason that they discovered is he couldn't take the pain anymore. And he told his parents, he finally told his mom that, you know, he was in a lot of pain, and they went in, and it was pretty much no doubt at that point, but he went into the emergency room and was transferred right away to a children's hospital. And this has only happened over the last few days. So I think it was Sunday night or Monday when this happened. And so, you know, he's got the surgery today and whatnot, and it's because he waited. So, and I wanted to bring that up because his parents feel so guilty, so guilty that they didn't recognize there was something wrong, and that he's been carrying this for almost a year. And now it's spread.
You know, I think that's got to be the worst kind of guilt. Really, that has got to be just horrible, horrible guilt. But you need to understand that feeling guilty about something isn't going to help it. And guilt is sort of a negative emotion. So rather than feeling guilty, I would like to see them let go of the guilt and move more towards just loving, you know, their kid well. And I think there's a lot to do with loving someone well. I think that's entirely possible. But when we get stuck in that guilt thing, it's really not a good place to come from.
Right.
And it's not helpful. It's not helpful to the patient either, because then they feel some, you know, the responsibility for, like I said, it's not just you you're dealing with the reaction from your family, and that's a really tough one to bear when you're already dealing with so much, you know.
Yes.
Right. I think maybe because this is a kid, I think maybe we need to start having these discussions in schools, because I think a lot of times kids, especially, you know, through grade school or even junior high school, they're not really comfortable in their own skin yet. They're still getting to know their body in some ways. So by the time they're teenagers, then it's like, well, I don't know, is this normal? I'm going through puberty. Maybe this is normal. Maybe this is supposed to happen. I don't know. And there's an embarrassment factor.
There is.
Yes. You know, and you know, they don't want to say, hey, here's where I have a problem. You know, it's a really difficult situation. So I really think we need to maybe have these discussions when kids are younger so that they recognize this is normal, this is not normal.
Right.
I completely agree, and that's exactly why he waited as long as he did, because it was very embarrassing for him, and he wasn't sure that he needed to take the problem to his parents. And there was the embarrassment factor, because it's a part of his body, you know, that and all kids, no matter, there's some shame or you know, that modesty kicks in, and it doesn't matter if it's like under your armpit. It's like, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That and the fear.
I know.
It's like how everybody deals with it. Everybody deals with it differently, but some people it's like, oh no, I'll be fine. It'll be okay. You know, I just, well, you know, or they shut down. It's like, I can't deal with this, so I'm just not going to. So it's also recognizing if there's some changes in personality or changes in, you know, you get moodier, that type of thing too. It's awfully hard with kids, but I agree with Kelly. It's education. That's key. Or just for girls too. You know, this is what to look for, and it's unusual, but I agree.
Well, you know, it happens, and cancers happen to young kids. And, you know, it seems to be, I spoke, one of the guests that I had on my Inspirational People series was 19 with ovarian cancer. And, you know, Western medicine says, oh, well, this only happens to older people. And there are many, many, many kinds of cancers that they don't think are likely for kids to have, so they just don't ever talk about them. And even in pediatricians' offices, it's just not something they look for. And I think that needs to change as well.
Yeah.
You know, they really need to do a better job, not only of educating, but of screening. And, you know, kids who are seeing a pediatrician, even if it's just a sports physical, I think those doctors kind of have a responsibility to ask questions and educate kids who come into their offices while they're doing a sports physical. You know, if here's when you need to be concerned, or here's when you need to talk to someone, and give them some scenarios. Absolutely. And family history plays a big part of it too, you know. Because a lot of times, although I also, you know, one of my friends that passed, there was nothing in the family. That was another thing. She's like, oh, well, we don't have this in the family. But anyway, okay, well, I'm about to load my boat, so it's been happy whale watching. Thank you.
Thank you so
thank
much
you,
for
Lisa.
joining me. Thank you. Have fun.
Thanks. Okay, thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Kelly. Bye now.
Bye.
Have
fun.
Oh, live
I want to go
so
whale
exciting,
watching.
Isn't it? I do too. Oh, my goodness.
Look, there's a whale.
Oh, that was such a great discussion, and what a perfect way to end the show, going whale watching.
Right,
That's
whale
awesome.
watching. Well, it brings home the point that really, you know, this is just a blip. You know, this is not a big deal. This is something that everyone, you know, that I know who have gone through it have come through with flying colors. There's a whole big life after cancer. It does change you. You know, there's a meme I've seen several times that says the person who comes out of the tunnel is not the same one that goes in. And it's very, very true, because it does change you.
Right.
But, you know, you have to look at it as looking for the lessons. You know, and it doesn't mean they have to be a harsh lesson. You know, my lesson was that strangers aren't necessarily strangers, and it's okay to ask for help, like Jody said, and it's good to receive as much as you give. And, you know, those are not bad lessons. They're not even hard lessons to learn, but they are lessons, and everything we go through in our lives really does teach us something. So, you know, and never.
It also teaches the people around you. Like in the case of my nephew, his family is getting a learning lesson as well. Right.
Absolutely. And you never underestimate the power of prayer. Whatever it is that you do, you know, and prayer looks different for different people. Some people drum, you know, some people meditate, some people actually get on their knees and pray, and it doesn't really matter who you pray to, whoever resonates with you, you know, but really never underestimate that, because we are energy.
Right.
And diseases are also energies. They're negative energies. So a lot of the time, Jody mentioned visualizations. And a lot of the time when I was going through all of my stuff, I would visualize where I had the cancer, and I would see it as black, and I would, in my mind, turn it white and let it go or dissolve it or whatever felt right to me at that time. And seeing yourself in perfect health, living the life you've dreamt of, having those experiences that you plan or that you want to see in your future. See yourself with putting this in the rearview mirror. See yourself as having gone through it with flying colors. That is huge. Your state of mind, your mindset is such a critical piece of the puzzle when it comes to any kind of disease or injury or actually in your day-to-day life. It's a very critical piece of who we are. And really, your thoughts do create things which create your life. So when you're going through something that's really bad, if you keep focusing on positive things, you're going to find that you're happier. You don't have as much fear, and especially with a young person, that fear is just going to be excruciating. So I think that's really, really helpful for young people in particular. But, one thing you might want to try is a squish ball. Those I used to have one on my desk where it was a little guy that stood up, and I would squeeze him and his eyes would pop out. And, find something physical, especially with boys, with men. Find something physical that he can grab onto or throw or step on or whatever to let out some of that hostility that is feeding that fear. I've seen that work really well with
I like
boys.
what Jody had said with the children's hospital, or was the ball that was red and black with the face, and they would throw it on the ground. And
that was here.
That's great. Okay,
yeah.
That was yours. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I love that idea. And you could do that in any situation, with any disease or illness, or just even your divorce or your boss. Make it just don't actually act on your boss. But yeah, you could use that for so many things.
But, it's just so important to keep a positive mindset. And one thing that people who put off treatment or put off going to the doctor have gone through is an incredible amount of guilt. And this young man is going to be experiencing a lot of guilt. He is going to feel guilty because his parents feel guilty. He's going to feel guilty because he shoulda, woulda, coulda. And that guilt is not going to be helpful. Yes.
Yes. My fiance, as I said at the beginning of the show, I was taking him to the airport, and we talked last night, and I said, I know that you man cry all you want. And I really hate saying the terminology man cry, but not everybody has come to terms with men have emotions too. I said, you man cry all you want, but what you don't do, you don't become a blubbering fool. Your family needs you to be the strong one. They all need for you to be the strong one. And, you take that, you carry it with you, you bring it home, and I will help you release whatever you bear this time that you're there. I will help you get rid of that when you get home, but do not, don't go back and be the one that can't handle it, or, is going to be the one that breaks down and whatnot. It's okay to cry. It's absolutely okay to cry. But that's one of the reasons why he wants to go, is to be there for his family. So, like I said, everyone's learning lessons. The whole family's learning lessons. Even I'm learning lessons. I had to let him go, The selfish part of me didn't want him to go. And then there's the other part of me that, even for me, this is my nephew through marriage. So I haven't known him his whole life. I haven't known him very long. I don't even really know him at all. I think we've met 1 or 2 times maybe, but even for me, I feel guilty because I'm not going with the family. I'm not going to Florida and sitting there with them and being a pillar for them and helping them try to process the emotions that they're going through right now. So it really does affect everybody on so many levels.
It does, and the thing that you can do from where you are is sit down. Doesn't have to be very long. Do it multiple times a day. Do it as often as you think. And when it crosses your mind, just quiet your mind, put your hand on your heart or however you are comfortable with, and send love to them. One of the things that Jody does is she'll, visualize heart energy and going into her hands, and she'll put a situation into her hands and lift it up to the heavens and then blow it into the universe as what she wants, or her wishes for things to happen or to have a good outcome or to shed light on things. And that's a really effective tool if you can visualize that. Just, in my mind, your heart energy is pink energy. Some people see it as green because the chakra your heart chakra is green. Pink energy has always seemed to me to be more of a kind, gentle, loving energy. So that's what I use. But if you visualize a pink bubble in your hand and fill it from your heart, with all the love you can pour into that thing, and then put this young man in the center of that pink bubble and send him up to God, to the universe, to angels, to aliens, whoever, and trust that they are caring for him and that your love is reaching him. I think that will help you, and it will certainly help him as well, because that is energy, and he can use all the positive energy right now that he can get.
Right. I agree. Thank you. I just want to throw out there one more time, public service announcement. If it feels off, go get it checked. Do not wait.
Yep.
Because waiting is going to cost you more money. Lose the fear of money.
It could cost you your life.
Checked. Exactly. Do it. Go and just get yourself checked. Get yourself checked. If you have a loved one that you think is off, something isn't quite right, take them to get them seen. Find somebody to confide in. Yeah, that's important, is to talk it through. Find someone you can confide in. But if you find yourself in a situation where you don't have people around you that are already in your circle that are supportive, open yourself up to allowing new people who will support you to come into your life. I've seen cases where, very similar to my first bout with cancer, where people were kind of left alone and they didn't make it, or they didn't fare so well. So you have to really open your heart to receive the love and the kindness and the friendship that will come to you when you are allowing it to come to you. You have to allow yourself to be helped. You have to allow yourself to be healed. And, people go through so many different emotions like we talked about earlier. It's really important to have someone that is nurturing around you when you're going through something. So don't think just because all of your friends have deserted you that you're all by yourself, because you're really not. Reach out to a nurse, reach out to a stranger, and realize that they're really not. There are loving, wonderful, caring, good, nurturing people everywhere. You just have to let them in. Yes, absolutely. This is such a great show. Thank you so much for being on it today. I know you've been my guest a couple times,
problem.
but this is an area that I wanted to talk about, considering we just found out within the last week the diagnosis for my nephew. And so I felt that this is something that a lot of people go through, whether they've actually experienced cancer themselves or they know a loved one who has. And so I felt that this was a show that really needed to be to be done. So thank you so much for being on it today.
You're very welcome. I think that wraps the show, and I want to be whale watching with Jody personally.
I do too. Everyone have a wonderful, wonderful Thursday, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Bye.